Well, good morning. Today, we're going to have a special dramatic presentation. And don't worry, it's not going to be me. So, in case you're worried, what's going on here? But it is going to be about God's providence. The theme is God's providence. And what does that mean? I had a professor one time that said it this way. He said, providence is the hand of God in the glove of human experience. And so we can't see the hand, but we can see the glove. And by watching the glove, we can determine what the hand is doing. So without the hand, the glove is limpless. It has no power. But when you put a hand in it, all of a sudden, brings it to life. It has purpose. It has meaning. And so, the same way, have you ever looked back in your life and seen just a series of events where you can say, man, God is at work. God was putting things together the whole time. And sometimes it happens through difficult times, through painful experiences, and we can look back and say, God was working in and through them. And so, sometimes we'll say, well, it's just a coincidence. But in reality, it's God's loving providence. He is working all the time. He's orchestrating all things for His glory and for our good. And so the book of Esther is what we're going to look at today, and it never directly mentions the name of God. But His presence is all throughout the story. It's as though He's behind the scenes. He's coordinating the events. He's working all the things for His will to happen. And so we can see God's providential hand at work in the life of real human experiences as we look at this story. And so the story you're about to hear takes place between 483 and 473 BC. And that's during the first half of the reign of King Xerxes. He is the king of Persia. And he chose Esther to be his queen. And during this time, the first remnant of the Jews, they had been in captivity, and they were returning to Judah. And a lot of them returned to Judah. But Esther and Mordecai and another group of Jews, they stayed in Persia. And you may not be familiar with the story, but as you hear it this morning, listen closely and watch for God's invisible yet very active hand at work.
My name is Harbona. My job, well, that depends on what country you're living in. In Great Britain, I'd probably be called a personal valet. In your country, I might be known as a male private secretary. But in my country, I am simply Harbona, chamberlain to Xerxes, the king of Persia. Now, you may have read about him or heard him called Ahasuerus, but his most popular name is Xerxes. Now, I got to tell you that at first, I hesitated to take the job because you just never knew about Xerxes. One moment, you could be good friends with him and everything would be going along just fine, and then all of a sudden, without any warning, he'd turn on you, and it would be all over. For instance, once Pythias, one of his leading advisors, offered Xerxes nearly $4 million to finance a military campaign. Well, Xerxes was so overwhelmed with the generosity that he refused the money, and he gave Pythias a gift besides. But then a little bit later, when Pythias sort of hinted that maybe his eldest son could be excluded from the military campaign, well, Xerxes became so infuriated that he hacked the boy in two and he marched the entire army between the pieces. That's what I mean when I say you just never knew about Xerxes. Or another time, a terrible storm out at sea destroyed 300 of his ships. In a blind rage, Xerxes went down to the shore. He took a wide strap and he beat the waves 300 times, once for each ship. So you can see why I hesitated to take the job. But I took it. I made up my mind I would get along with Xerxes. I would never rub him the wrong way. I would just go with the flow. Well, I would like to tell you about a series of coincidences that have happened here in Persia lately. We have had the most peculiar chain of events take place. It's really been quite amazing the way everything has sort of worked itself out. It all started after what we like to call the Bay of Salamis fiasco. Xerxes was in the process of trying to take over Greece, and he got as far as the Bay of Salamis when, in a terrible naval battle, his entire navy was destroyed. It was so bad, Xerxes had to sneak home in a fishing boat. Well, for a long time after that, Xerxes was down in the dumps. I mean, he brooded all day. There wasn't any spark. There wasn't any life. And then he started talking about Vashti. Poor Vashti. How he'd done her wrong. You see, Vashti is the queen that Xerxes had gotten rid of, and it was an unfortunate affair. But what's past is past. There's no use talking about it. You can't change it. So I thought to myself, something has got to be done to put some life back into Xerxes. I know. Women. And lots of them. I told my idea to Xerxes. Your Highness, why don't we gather young virgins from all over the empire right here to the palace? Why don't you spend some time with them? Why don't you get to know them? Maybe you'll find one of them you like well enough to make your new queen. Well, Xerxes went for the idea. And before long, we had the most beautiful women from all over Persia right here at the palace. All those beautiful girls. The whole thing did wonders for Xerxes. He spent time with every one of them, and yet, before long, you could tell that there was one that caught his eye. Sure enough, before long, they spent more and more time together, and soon she was the only one. Xerxes had found himself a new queen. The girl's name was Esther, and as far as I was concerned, Xerxes had picked the very best one. Funny thing, though, is she didn't look quite Persian to me. But she was beautiful, and she was sharp, and made a great-looking queen. What's the difference? Xerxes was his old self again. That's all that mattered. Well, things went along real well for about 5 years. And then one day, Xerxes is on his throne, holding court, and in hops Haman. Now, Haman is the king's favorite. He has sort of risen up through our State Department, and at this point, he's the number 2 man in all of Persia. Now, I got to tell you, I don't like Haman. I just don't trust him. I never have. Of course, I never told anything to Xerxes about it. You know, go with the flow. Anyway, in hops Haman. He's got this little speech all prepared for Xerxes. Your Highness, there is within your empire a group of people that is a very disruptive element. They have their own peculiar laws. They don't pay much attention to our laws. It's really to your disadvantage to put up with them. Now, I suggest you pass a decree to get rid of them. And I myself am willing to put forward the funds necessary to carry out this little endeavor. Well, you know what Xerxes said? He said, sounds like a good idea to me, Haman. Why don't you take care of it? Oh, and Haman, keep your money. Use government funds. And that was it. He didn't ask who it was. He didn't ask what the risks might be. But that's just the way Xerxes was sometime. But it wasn't Xerxes that bothered me as much as it was Haman. You see, it wasn't like Haman to be so solicitous for the king's welfare that he was willing to put up even his own money unless he was going to get something out of it. I had to find out what it was. The guy that tutors Haman's son, he's a friend of mine. So I asked him, and you know what it was? Haman wants to get rid of a whole race of people because he's irritated at one member of that race. Because Haman can't get along with one individual, he wants to get rid of the whole group. Let me try to explain what's happening. We have in Persia what's called a citizens' council. One person from every ethnic or national or geographic region selects one person, and they sit on a council. It's the council's job to decide on matters that are less important for the king. Well, as the number 2 man in all of Persia, it's Haman's job every once in a while to stop in and see how things are going at the council meeting. Whenever Haman stops by, all the representatives stand up and bow to Haman. All the representatives, that is, except one. The Jewish representative just stays seated in his chair. And that is all Haman sees. All the representatives bowing to Haman, but that one. Okay for you, Mr. Jewish representative. I'll get you and your people. And that was it. Haman wants to get rid of all the Jews because their representative wouldn't bow down to him. And I mean get rid of them. I saw a copy of the decree after they finished filling it out. It was brutal. You couldn't misunderstand the language. Destroy, kill, and annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children. Confiscate all their property on December 13th. There was no mistaking it. Destroy, kill, and annihilate. Young and old, women and children, December 13th. And I thought to myself, those poor Jews, they've only got about 11 months to live. And the more I thought about it, the more the whole thing just didn't make any sense to me. From as much as I could tell, the reason the Jewish representative wouldn't bow down to Haman had something to do with his religious beliefs. And we Persians have always been tolerant of other people's religions. That Haman, he gets my goat. I thought of saying something to Xerxes about it, but why stick my neck out there? Besides, it was too late anyway. The decree was already in circulation. Well, a couple of days later, I was on the second floor of the palace where I normally do my duties, and I happened to pass by an open window, and I noticed that out in the courtyard, there's a terrible commotion going on. There's a guy on the ground, and he's wailing, and he's hollering, and he's a mess. I mean, his hair is all matted, his face is all smeared with dirt, and his clothes, they're just shredded. And I thought to myself, somebody has got to get that guy away from the palace. So I go to make my way over to the stairs to go down to get rid of him when I bump into Haytak. Now, Haytak is the queen's attendant, and it looks like he's heading the same direction I am, except he's carrying some clothes. So I ask him, Haytak, where are you headed? What are you doing? Esther the queen gave me these clothes, told me to take them to that guy out there. Really? Well, you do that, Haytak. And hey, while you're at it, will you tell him to get away from the palace? And I thought to myself, that Esther, she is all heart. I mean, how many queens do you know who would care about a bum in the street? Well, a couple minutes later, I see Haytak coming back up the stairs, and he's still carrying the clothes. What's the matter, Haytak? Weren't they his size? Harbona, do you know who that is out there? No, who? It's the Jewish representative. Well, he does have something to holler about if he's seen the decree. Well, I don't know about that. He gave me this piece of paper, told me to go see Esther about it. Let me see that. Well, this is the decree. He told you to go see Esther about it? Esther doesn't have anything to do with this. Well, I don't know. He told me to go see Esther and to have her go see Xerxes. Go see Xerxes? Well, Xerxes doesn't know anything to do. Well, okay, Xerxes knows about it, but he doesn't know it's against the Jews. Why see Esther? I don't know. That's what he told me to do. Give me the paper. And off Haytak went. A couple hours later, I saw Haytak again, and it looked as if all of the color had drained from his face. Haytak, how you doing? Harbona, guess what? Esther, the queen, she's a Jewess. No, you're kidding. No, she's a Jew. Well, no wonder she didn't look Persian to me. No, she's a Jew. And when she saw a copy of the decree, she turned as white as a ghost. And she doesn't at all want to go see Xerxes about it. You know, Xerxes hasn't called for her in over a month. I know, he's in one of his moods again lately. So she sent me back out to the Jewish representative. His name's Mordecai, and he's actually her uncle. She told me to tell him it's not a good time to go see Xerxes, and who knows what might happen. But Mordecai told me to tell her that her being queen isn't going to save her because the decree is against all the Jews. And who knows, maybe she became queen for just a time as this. Well, Haytak, what's Esther going to do? Well, she's going to take her chances and go see Xerxes. Harbona, do you think maybe we should say something to Xerxes? Are you kidding me? There is no way that I'm getting trapped between Xerxes and Haman and Esther. No. We will just wait and see how things take themselves out. And I thought, things are going to get really interesting around here. Haman has a decree out against all the Jews, but he doesn't know that Esther's a Jew. And Xerxes is in the dark about the whole thing. I can't wait to see what happens. I didn't have to wait very long. A couple of days later, Xerxes is on his throne, holding court, and the side door opens. And it's Esther. And does she look good? She has really dolled herself up. And Xerxes got one look at Esther, and he got his scepter down real fast so that she could approach the throne. And as she approached the throne, Xerxes could see something was bothering her. And so he asked her, Esther, is there something wrong? Is there something I can do for you? Something I can give you? And I thought, oh boy, here it comes. But all she said was, no, but what she would like is she would like to hold a special lunch and to invite Xerxes and Haman as her guests that day. And I thought, well, maybe it's better that she doesn't say anything now because Haman's not here anyplace. So a little later that day, we're at lunch. We're all there. It's Xerxes and Esther and Haman. And so Xerxes pressed her again, and I thought, well, here it comes. But this time, Esther said that what she wanted is to hold another luncheon tomorrow and invite Xerxes and Haman as her guests, and then she would tell Xerxes what was bothering her. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what Esther was waiting for. But you remember how I said it's been sort of a peculiar chain of events? It occurs to me now that if Esther had asked Xerxes at the first luncheon, it would have been too soon. Because of what happened between the first luncheon and the second one. The first thing that happened, and I got this from the tutor at Haman's house, is that Haman, he practically floated home on a cloud. He invited all his friends over. They threw a big party. They called it Haman Night. And they celebrated all the wealth he'd accumulated, his rise to power, all of his fame, and now the very top piece of that, private luncheons with royalty. The only moth in Haman's Persian rug was Mordecai, the Jewish representative. Even with the decree out, Mordecai still wouldn't bow down to Haman. So Haman and his friends, they got together that night, and they decided that the Jewish representative, that he needed to go even before December 13th. In fact, they went out into Haman's backyard. He's got this big old tree. They put ropes all in it and turned it into a gallows. And then they decided that the very next morning, first thing, Haman would approach Xerxes about hanging the Jewish representative. the second thing that happened between the first luncheon and the second one, and this is really strange, is that night, Xerxes had insomnia. And he usually sleeps like a baby. I'm in my bedchambers, right next to Xerxes. About 2 a.m, I hear, "Harbona, Harbona." So I run into his room. "Yes, Your Majesty." "I can't sleep. Bring something to read to me." "Okay, how about the memoirs of your raids?" "That'll be fine." "Any particular place you want me to start?" "No, just read someplace." So I pick a couple years ago, and I just start reading. And I'd been reading about 15 minutes when I came to a very interesting paragraph. Something about how on his way to the council meeting one day, the Jewish representative overheard a plot to take the king's life. He tipped off the queen, who averted the whole thing, saving the king's life. Well, at this point, Xerxes sort of perked up a little bit. "Harbona, has anything ever been done for, what's his name, Mordecai? Has anything ever been done for him?" "Mordecai. Yes, Mordecai. Has he been rewarded in any way?" So I checked the scroll. "No, sir, I can't find any evidence that anything's ever been done." "Well, I tell you what, Harbona, tomorrow first thing you remind me and we'll take care of that little oversight." And I thought to myself, this is a fine how do you do. Haman's going to hang him. Xerxes going to honor him. I can't wait for the morning. Well, first thing the next morning, Xerxes takes his throne. Didn't even have to be reminded. He looks over to me and he asks, "Are any of my advisors available?" "Haman's in the hall." "Well, good. Send him in." So in comes Haman, all ready to ask Xerxes about hanging the Jewish representative. Before he can even open his mouth, Xerxes says, "Haman, I need your help. There is a man within my empire to whom I owe a lot. And what I would like is I would like to honor him. I want everyone to know how important he is to me. I want to do something very special. Do you have any ideas of what I could do?" Well, has Haman's conceited mind got ideas? "Well, I'll tell you what, Xerxes, you really ought to do it right. Whoever it is, this is what you should do. You should take the king's royal robes and place them on his back. Oh, then you should take the royal crown of Xerxes and place it on his head. Then you should take one of your leading officials and take this person and put them up on the king's royal stallion and have this leading official walk him all through town saying, 'This is the man the king wishes to honor. This is the man the king wishes to honor.'" "Oh, Haman, I love that idea. Now look, you're one of my leading officials, right? I want you to do everything you just described for the Jewish representative. Mordecai's his name. Listen, now you'll find him down at the council meeting. I want you to meet him there and do everything you just described. And Haman, shout loud, because I really owe this man a lot." I wish you could have seen Haman's face. It looked as if someone had just given him a mildewed fig. Well, we got glowing reports of Haman's little parade all through town. And then by the time lunch came, Haman had pretty much pulled himself together. We were all there, Xerxes and Esther and Haman. And then as we were sort of lingering over dessert, Xerxes pressed her again. "Esther, I know something's bothering you. Is there something I can do for you? Is there something I can give you?" And I thought, here it comes. And sure enough, "Yes, Xerxes, there is something you can give to me. You can give me my life and the lives of my people, for we are about to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." You should have seen Haman's face. Every word was like a slap right across it. Xerxes was a little slower to connect the dots. "Esther, what are you talking about? Who would do such a thing? You're the queen. You name the man." "Haman." "Haman? What do you mean? No, Haman wouldn't." "Oh, no." And Haman got up and he bolted from the room out onto the patio. It was too much for him. He had to figure it all out. As soon as Haman left the room, or as Xerxes left the room, Haman came completely unglued. Esther, I had no idea. Esther, if I had known. But she wouldn't listen to him. She got up from the table. She began to walk away. Haman, he came over to her. He got down. He began to beg, Esther, please, if I had known, I would have never. But she refused to listen. He began to pull on her to make her listen. At that moment, Xerxes came back in from the patio, took one look, came to the wrong conclusion. Will you molest the queen in my own palace? Cover his face. Well, that was it for Haman. You see, to cover the face, it means to drop the veil of death. And it's all over. I spoke up then. I don't usually, Your Majesty, that tree in Haman's backyard make a mighty fine gallows. Well, hang him on it. And they did. And then they passed another decree. You see, the Medes and the Persians, they don't like canceling their laws very well. So what they did is they passed another decree to supersede the first one. And what that decree said was that when December 13th came, not only could the Jews defend themselves, but they could band together. And they could take any initiative they wanted to defend their lives and their livelihoods and their material possessions. I wish you could have seen the Jews dancing in the streets when they got word of the second decree. Well, a couple hours later, I was back on the second floor of the palace, and I happened to pass by that window again, and I just got to thinking of all the amazing things that had happened. I mean, who would have thought it would have all worked itself out the way it did? Now, Esther, out of all those girls, being picked to become queen. Mordecai, saving the king's life. Xerxes, having insomnia on just the right night. And as I looked out that window and I saw the Jews dancing in the streets, and then as I looked sort of through the courtyard past the palace wall and I saw Haman hanging from the tree, I thought, those Jews sure are lucky. Let's pray together.